Welcome to Thriver's Ed, the podcast that's all about giving you the practical, no-nonsense advice you need to level up your life and business. I'm your host, Marcy Rossi, success coach, business strategist, and alcohol-free enthusiast. If you're ready to crush your goals, optimize your productivity, and live your best, most authentic life, then you're in the right place. Each week, we'll dive into topics like the psychology of success, practical strategies to boost your performance, and the unexpected ways living alcohol-free can elevate your life. Whether you're looking to boost your business, improve your health, or simply become a better version of yourself, Thriver's Ed is here to help you do just that. So grab your iced coffee, buckle up, and let's get thriving. Today, we're diving into one of the most critical aspects of running your business, and that is tracking and analyzing your metrics. Now, before you roll your eyes at me and tell me that you're not a numbers person or you're not a math person, you need to know that if you're not taking the time to measure your key business metrics and actually review and analyze those numbers, you are leaving a lot of opportunities on the table. You are probably wasting time, money, and energy that you could be redirecting into the actions that are really going to move the needle in your business. Now, I understand that not everyone loves spreadsheets like I do, but you don't have to be obsessed with Excel to understand what's working in your business and what isn't. You just need to track the right things. And today, we're going to talk about which metrics you should focus on, why they matter, and how doing this can literally 10x your business. When I first got started in the corporate world, I didn't really know anything about spreadsheets. I knew that you could add numbers up in Excel, but that was pretty much it. And honestly, that's what I thought spreadsheets were for, was just basic math. But then I started working at a Big Four accounting firm, and spreadsheets were essentially the day-to-day operations. Like, these people lived and died by their Excel spreadsheets. Fortunately, I had a mentor who was willing to show me a bunch of opportunities like pivot tables and VLOOKUPs and SUMIFs, all these things that were going to shorten my time and help me make a better sense of the numbers in front of me. Because it wasn't just about recording the data, it was about manipulating it in a way that allowed me to have insights into what was working in the business that I hadn't even thought about. So you don't have to become a spreadsheet wizard. You don't have to learn about pivot tables and VLOOKUPs and all these things, but you do need to understand how powerful data can be. The first thing in this is to make sure that you actually take the time to look at your business metrics. Now, that sounds quite obvious, but so many people don't make this a habit, and they end up making their decisions on their gut feeling or their intuition instead of the actual data. So I have a standing appointment in my calendar every Friday morning where I spend about 20 to 30 minutes looking at my numbers. I looked at what changed, but more importantly, I analyze why those changes happened. Did something go up? Did something go down? And what influenced that? Is there something within my control that I'm able to take action on based on seeing what that data is doing? So it's not that I obsess over every single fluctuation, but it's like you're looking at the patterns over time. So if we're starting to see a steady decrease in a number that we hope is going up, we may need to pivot and head in another direction. And if you're not looking at this, if you wait to review these numbers to say every quarter or heaven forbid once a year, you're basically flying blind. You're hoping that things are going to get better without having a real idea of what's working and what isn't. So let's say you take the time to start looking at the data. What data are we actually looking at? Something that I see a lot of people get tripped up on, vanity metrics. These are things like the number of downloads for your podcast, the number of followers you have, the number of likes, comments, and shares on social media. And don't get me wrong, these numbers are interesting, and yes, I myself track them as well because they make you feel good. They give you that little boost of dopamine to say, okay, actually, people like me, right? But they're not going to affect your bottom line directly. For example, I know of several people who have not a lot of followers. We're talking less than 5,000, less than 2,000 followers. And these people are absolutely crushing it in their business. And that's because their sales don't depend on having a massive following. Those sales happen off social media. So that is through their email list, through their sales funnel, and other marketing strategies that they've employed. So it can feel really good to have a lot of followers or some high engagement on social media, but it doesn't necessarily correlate to sales. And that's why we're here, right? So what you should be focusing on are the metrics that tell you about the health of your business. Think of it as your physical, except instead of once a year, we're going to be looking at this weekly, right? Because it helps you make smarter decisions. So what are those numbers? Now, I'm going to break down a couple of the key metrics that I track every week and give you a little idea of why they matter and why you should care. So first up are metrics related to your website. So a couple of things I look at here. First, I look at new versus returning users over a set period of time. And again, since I look on Fridays, I track from the previous Friday to the following Thursday. So about a 1 week period of time I'm looking at here and comparing it to the weeks previous. When we talk about new users, this means that I'm getting new eyeballs on my stuff, which is great. That means that my reach is expanding. And returning users tell me that people are getting enough value from my website that they're deciding to come back, that they care enough about what I'm offering to want to come back and to learn more. So both of these are really important, and you can compare these to the actions that you're taking, right? So if we start to see spikes in new users, it might be because we've been doing more networking events, or we've been posting more on social media, or perhaps we were guest podcasting on another person's podcast. And if we start to see that number trend down, this is a signal to us that we might need to ramp up our marketing efforts. So now we know the number of people that are on our website. I want to know where they're coming from next. So if you're running an online business, this is crucial. You need to understand where people are coming from so that if those new users are trending down, you know what makes the most sense of your time and energy in order to promote yourself further. So I look at where those sources are. This could be Instagram, Pinterest, Google, or something else. And this helps me understand where I should direct my marketing efforts. If most of my traffic is coming from Google, then that gives signals to me that my SEO efforts are working. If most of my traffic is coming from Pinterest, I can look at what those pins are that people are responding to and increase my offerings in that area so that I'm able to reach even more people. So now we know how many people are coming to our website. We know how they got to our website, but then we need to know what happens once they land on our website. And that is where we look at the average engagement time and the engagement rate. So the engagement time tells you how long people are spending on your website, obviously on an average. And the longer that someone stays, the more likely they are to take the kinds of actions that you're hoping for. Meaning they're signing up for your email list or downloading your freebie or purchasing something. If that engagement time starts dropping, that's a red flag for me. That could mean that the people that are landing on my website aren't finding what they expect, or they're just not finding enough value. And so it's time for me to shape my content to get them even more engaged. Engagement rate is the number of engaged sessions divided by the total number of sessions. So engaged sessions are things like when they spend more than 10 seconds on your website, when they look at more than one page, so they're clicking through your website, or they take a conversion action. And that is, of course, the ideal where they're doing something like purchasing or downloading a freebie, joining an email list, whatever it is that you've defined a conversion as. So obviously, we want this number to be high because it means people aren't bouncing off your site. You may have heard of bounce rate before. This is essentially the opposite side of that. So bounce rate are people that come to your website and then immediately click off without taking any engaged action. This is the number that you actually want, that engaged action where they're doing something instead of just scrolling or clicking on and immediately clicking off. If my engagement rate drops below 50%, I start to question whether something's wrong with my site. Maybe my page isn't loading well. It's loading too slow. Things aren't loading in the proper order, or there's something confusing happening. Maybe I've got bots that are, inflating my traffic numbers. There's something that points out that there is a potential issue that I'm able to address before it becomes a much bigger problem. Moving on to social media. So as I mentioned, I do track vanity metrics like likes and follows and that sort of thing because they make me feel good. But there is a more important metric that I hope that you're looking at with your social media, and that is link clicks. So this tells me how many people are clicking that link in my Instagram bio or in my stories and heading to my website. If that number is low, that tells me that there's a disconnect between what I'm posting and what people are expecting to see, that my content isn't engaging enough to drive them to take action. So it helps me understand if my messaging is clear and if it's driving the kinds of actions that I'm hoping people will take. I also look at Pinterest activity. I kind of mentioned this before, but for me, Pinterest has been really interesting in how it drives traffic to my site. And the best part is that it's free. I'm not even talking about ads, which I could probably do a whole other episode on because I have some strong feelings about Pinterest ads, but I'm just looking at organic reach here. This is something that costs you nothing other than your time. And you can start to look at the pins that get the most clicks and that are driving the most traffic to your site and analyzing those. Can you find a layout or a color scheme that seems to be resonating? Are there keywords that tend to drive more action than not? And you can double down on that kind of content. Once you know what's working, you can start to invest your efforts on what's working and let go of what doesn't seem to be driving traffic. Okay, I want to get into another one. It's obvious, but not always looked at, and that is our revenues and expenses. I recently worked with a client who couldn't tell me how much money she had been making and spending in that particular month. And the thing is, if you don't know these numbers, how can you expect to grow? You have to know what's coming in and going out in order to best optimize both of those numbers. So for me, as part of my metrics, I also look at my specific expenses and I do my receipts and everything so that my accounting is up to date. But when I look at those expenses, I ask myself, is this still serving me? And if it's not, it's time to cut it. So for example, last year I signed up for a social media scheduling tool and I haven't been using it. I used it a lot in the beginning and I recently haven't been using it. I've been either posting in the moment or using Instagram's native scheduling tool. And so this is an expense that I can now cancel when it comes up for renewal. That's something I also track is all of the recurring subscriptions that I have and the dates that they're up for renewal so that I'm not surprised with another annual subscription to something that probably isn't serving me any longer. So that's money back in my pocket right there. On the other side of expenses is revenues. Are you seeing peaks in your income and what is driving that? Or are you seeing dips and what actions can you double up on to try to even out those dips? Have you recently run a promotion? Are you changing your prices? Understanding where your revenue is primarily coming from and what actions you've been taking to drive that helps you replicate those results in the future. Another metric that I look at isn't like a traditional metric. It's not going to give you numbers that you can record on a pretty spreadsheet, but I am obsessed with it. I use a tool that records screen activity for visitors for my website. Now, it does this anonymously. It's not going to give me any real deep information aside from what browser they're using, potentially the device that they're using, and maybe where they came from, how they landed on my website. But those things aren't as important to me as what they actually do when they land on my website. Are they clicking the buttons that I want them to click? Are they getting stuck somewhere? Do I see something where the flow isn't working? I've actually used this to see when my links are broken, when I've had something set up and then it's not actually working anymore, and I can go in and actually fix these problems. This has been a game changer for me in understanding where my website might be a little confusing to users or where their bottlenecks are in my site. So there's lots of tools that you can use for this. I actually use two different things. My website is built on Wix, and I use a tool called Twipla, which is Twipla, which captures screen recordings anonymously. They actually are compliant with the EU cookie laws, so it is really anonymous, but it gives you an idea of what a person landing on your website might actually experience. That gives you an idea of how you can optimize that. Hotjar is another tool. You can create heat maps with Hotjar so you can see what people are spending the most time on their website. Like literally, are there sections of your pages that they tend to spend more time on versus other? Are they skimming through some other parts? Do you actually need those other parts, or are they just not landing with your ideal audience? So it can be really insightful and help you optimize your website for more conversions, which is of course the purpose of your website, right? These are a bunch of different metrics that I look at, and typing them in your spreadsheet is great, but it doesn't end there. We have to look at them, right? And when I talk about looking at them, it's not just seeing if something went up and down week by week, but really recognizing the patterns. Are certain actions that you're taking consistently driving traffic? Are certain weeks better than other weeks, and why? What changed? So for example, if my reach and impressions are down on Instagram, but I only posted twice that week and normally I post 5 times, the answer is pretty obvious. But if I've been consistently posting and my numbers are still dipping, that gives me the opportunity to dig deeper. Is it a problem with my content? Is my content just not landing with people this week? Or could it be that Instagram is playing with the algorithm again, and so it's just not being put in front of as many eyeballs as it used to be? By looking at your metrics over a period of time, you can start to see these connections and then adjust your strategy accordingly. So we're talking about micro shifts here, right? If we're seeing that you're getting a lot more traffic from your website from Pinterest over social media, it doesn't mean that you should abandon all efforts at social media, but perhaps a little bit more of your time could be directed to Pinterest so that you're driving more traffic and hopefully more conversions. All right, so we are going to wrap this up as we always do with our Thrive in 5 for today. And these are the steps to take right now. And today's are very simple. I only have 2 steps for you, but they are very powerful. Number 1 is to set up a system to track your metrics. If you aren't already tracking key metrics in your business, it is time to start right now. I don't care if you use a fancy app, if you use a spreadsheet, or literally just writing it down in a notebook. The point is to start tracking. You can't improve what you don't measure. And so I suggest setting a routine. For me, it is Friday mornings, getting it done in 20 to 30 minutes where I record all of the data and then take a look at it. And you'll really be amazed at how quickly patterns emerge once you start paying attention to what's actually going on in your business. This is especially important if you track nothing else, to track your revenues and expenses. And I can't emphasize this enough. If you're running a business, you need to know what money is coming in and what's going out. I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs who are just flying blind in this area. They want to make more money, but they don't even know how much they've already made. And they want to cut costs, but they don't even know where their money is going. So here's what I want you to do. Set a weekly check-in with yourself to, at a minimum, review your revenues and expenses. If you're not sure where to start, for me, for my expenses, I literally just pull up my business credit card. And at the same time, I'm doing my accounting because I am filing the receipts for those, looking at what those expenses are, and giving a quick analysis of whether or not they're actually still serving me. So specifically for those subscriptions, those recurring fees, asking yourself if this is still serving you. Like, are you using the service, or is it maybe time to cut it? The same for your revenue. Where is your income coming from? And what actions are you doing that's driving that income? Because when you know this, you can make more intentional actions moving forward. So we know what to track. We're going to start tracking it. And the next thing to note is that this is just some of the metrics that I track. I have more, and I have more information about how you actually find these numbers, right? Like, it's great for me to talk about average engagement rate or return on ad spend or all these different metrics that we could possibly look at. But if you don't know where to find them, then it's not going to help you much. So I've made a guide to the 5 key metrics you're probably not tracking that could 10x your business. I've made this super simple for you. It has metrics that I didn't have time to cover in today's episode, along with the definitions and the step-by-step instructions for how to find these. This guide is going to help you really zero in on the numbers that matter the most, and then you can make decisions based on real data and not just guessing. So the link to download this guide is in the show notes, so make sure you grab that as soon as you finish listening to today's episode. To wrap up, at the end of the day, tracking your metrics, it's more than just knowing the numbers. It's about taking control of your business. Because when you know exactly what's working and what isn't, you can make the informed decisions that really drive your growth. And more importantly, you can stop wasting time on things that aren't moving the needle and then double down on what really is. So, these metrics, they tell a story of your business. And like any good story, there's going to be some ups and downs. Some weeks are going to be better than others. But when you have the data to back it up, you're no longer making emotional decisions based on how you feel things are going. And instead, you're making decisions based on facts. One thing I want to leave you with is something that you've heard, I'm sure, a million times, and that is consistency is everything. Your metrics aren't going to change overnight. It's not enough to just look at them once and then forget about it. You have to be consistent, so week in, week out, if you want to see some real progress. That's why I have a weekly check-in with myself, and I encourage you to do the same. Put it in your calendar, treat it like a non-negotiable meeting that you have, because this is where informed decisions come from. This is where you can stop flying blind and take the actions that are really going to matter. Tracking your key business metrics is one of the most powerful things you can do to grow your business, and don't let the numbers intimidate you. Start small, work on just a couple at a time, and you can always build from there. And don't forget to grab that free guide. It's going to give you all the tools you need to take your tracking game to the next level. So go out there, create that lovely spreadsheet, and start making the decisions that are going to propel you forward. And if you found this episode helpful, I'd love it if you'd share it with a fellow entrepreneur or leave a review. It really helps the show reach more people, and I really appreciate the support. So that's all I've got for you for today's episode of Thrivers Ed. Until next week, keep thriving.